What happens when the facade of a perfect life and a perfect family shatters into unimaginable tragedy? Today we unravel a story that shook an entire community, a case of betrayal, heartbreak, and devastating loss. This is the haunting tale of Neil Entwistle. Thank you for joining me today. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Your support means the world to me. Also, please be aware that this documentary includes sensitive content, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. Now settle in and let's begin. Neil Entwistle was born on September 18, 1978 in England. He and his brother were raised in a working-class family. Their father worked in a mine and served as a local politician, while their mother took care of the home and also worked part-time as a school cook to support the family budget. As Neil grew up, he excelled academically and was the first in his family to pursue higher education. Despite his achievements, he felt ashamed of his background and dreamed of joining a higher social class. He began studying electronic engineering combined with business management at the University of York. It was during his studies in 1999 that Neil met Rachel, a student from the United States. Rachel had a blended family with 3 brothers, 2 stepbrothers, and 2 stepsisters. Her father had passed away when she was young and her mother had remarried. As a teenager, Rachel was a star on her school's track and field team, an excellent swimmer training to become a lifeguard, and she had dreams of attending law school. Eventually, she decided to study English literature and went to York on a student exchange program where she met Neil. The two were initially drawn together by their shared love of sports, and both joined the university's rowing team. Rachel's skill and positive energy made her a welcome addition to the team, even though it was a men's team. Neil, who was more reserved and calm, appreciated her presence. Despite their different temperaments, they were attracted to each other and soon became a couple. Neil took the relationship very seriously, often introducing Rachel as the woman he intended to spend the rest of his life with. Rachel was equally enchanted by Neil, appreciating his politeness, reliability, and open adoration. As time passed, the foreign exchange program ended, and Rachel had to return to America to complete her final year of studies. The separation made her realize how much she missed Neil, and she soon returned to the UK to be with him. By 2001, Rachel and Neil rented an apartment in Birmingham. Rachel started working as an English teacher, while Neil began his career with a company connected to the British Army's Research and Development Division. The couple was very happy together. Neil even posted online about his plans to marry Rachel, describing her as the most amazing woman in the world. On August 10, 2003, they had a fairy tale wedding ceremony and spent their honeymoon traveling around the Mediterranean. Fulfilled both personally and professionally, the couple decided it was time to start a family. Just a year after their wedding, Rachel became pregnant. In April 2005, their dream came true when their daughter Lillian was born. The proud father created a special website to share family photos with their loved ones in America, especially the grandparents who wanted to see their granddaughter as often as possible. The site was filled with portraits of a happy family. Despite their apparent happiness, the differences in their personalities were still noticeable. Rachel had adapted well to life in England, building fantastic relationships with her students and having a close-knit group of friends. Neil, on the other hand, remained a loner and struggled with insecurities about his background. He believed his accent, which revealed his working-class roots, was holding him back in his career. Neil felt increasingly trapped by his insecurities and perceived limitations in England. Believing that a change of scenery might offer new opportunities, he proposed moving to the USA. Rachel, missing her family and eager to support her husband, embraced the idea with enthusiasm. She knew her parents would be thrilled to see their granddaughter more often, despite the difficulty of saying goodbye to her friends and students in England. In September 2005, Neil arranged to work remotely with his employer, retaining his salary of $10,000 a month. The family of 3 moved to the United States and initially stayed with Rachel's mother and stepfather. The grandparents were overjoyed, especially Rachel's stepfather Joe, whose stern appearance belied his warm and affectionate nature with little Lillian. Joe, an avid gun collector, also tried to bond with Neil by inviting him to join in recreational shooting, which Neil eagerly agreed to. Neil started searching for a new job, but his interviews were unsuccessful. He even attempted to start his own business, creating a website for his technology services, but he was unprepared and lacked the necessary equipment. After a few months, they decided to move out of Rachel's parents' home and rented a house in the suburbs of Boston, in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. The house was nearly new, spacious, and even had a hot tub in the garden, but it was unfurnished. By mid-January 2006, they had everything ready and moved into their new home, celebrating this new chapter in their lives by renting a white BMW. Rachel was excited to host a gathering on Saturday, January 21st, for her friends and focused on unpacking, cleaning, and preparing the house. She also arranged a lunch with her mother to thank her for helping organize the new space. However, things took a worrying turn when Rachel's friend couldn't reach her on January 21, 2006. The friend knew Rachel, her husband, and their 9-month-old daughter had planned to host a dinner party that evening. Despite the house being fully lit and Rachel's phone ringing inside, no one answered the door when guests arrived. A note from Rachel's mother was found on the door, asking Rachel to call her as she hadn't been able to reach her since their scheduled meeting on Friday. Concerned for Rachel's safety, the friend contacted the Hopkinton police to file a missing person report. The unsettling circumstances prompted the police to take immediate action and investigate the family's whereabouts. The police visited the family's home and upon finding no response, decided to enter. They found nothing suspicious. Classical music was playing in the child's room, and a bathtub filled with water suggested that the family had planned to bathe their daughter but had to leave unexpectedly. The house was in disarray with bedding tossed on the bed in the master bedroom, but there was no sign of the family and the garage was empty. The officers checked the license plate of the family's vehicle but found no information about any accidents. With no laws preventing adults from leaving without notifying their family, the police had little they could do. They released a brief notice with the couple's car registration number to alert other police units. However, Rachel's friends and family were deeply unsettled, as it was unimaginable that she would leave without informing them. Rachel's stepfather took immediate action, leveraging his connections by calling an old neighbor and longtime friend who was a retired police officer and former lead investigator. He advised against entering Rachel's home as it could disturb crucial evidence, and made a few important calls that accelerated the investigation. The police began interviewing neighbors and rechecked the couple's vehicle. They decided to enter the Entwistle home once more, and this time, a foul odor struck them as soon as they crossed the threshold. As the officers climbed the stairs, the stench became unbearable near the master bedroom door. Inside, everything appeared as it had before, but when an officer gently lifted the hastily thrown blanket on the bed, they immediately spotted a woman's foot. Upon pulling back more of the bedding, they discovered the bodies of 27-year-old Rachel, curled up in the fetal position, and 9-month-old Lillian lying beside her. The medical examiner was called to the scene. Autopsies revealed that Rachel had died from a gunshot wound to the head, while her daughter had been shot in the body. Additionally, numerous bruises were found on the baby's face. The investigation quickly located the family's car at the airport parking lot. Although the doors were locked, the keys were still in the ignition, and inside the car, the police found keys to Rachel's parents' house but no traces of blood. Given that the car was at the airport, investigators assumed Neil had fled. Rachel's parents realized how little they knew about their son-in-law. His job was always vaguely described as related to computers, but details were never clear. Suspiciously, Neil never paid in cash, always using credit cards, claiming his money was tied up in overseas accounts. Unexpectedly, Rachel's parents received a call from Neil's father, who claimed Neil had contacted him, saying he left the house for 20 minutes and returned to find his wife and daughter already dead. He allegedly called the police and then went to Rachel's parents' house, finding no one home. Confused and scared, he called his father from the airport, informing him he was returning to England. Shortly after, Neil himself called Rachel's stepfather Joe, telling him the same story but omitting the part about calling the police. Neil likely realized that Joe, involved enough in the investigation, would know that no such call had been made. The police held a press conference to inform the public of the tragic events, emphasizing that there was no official suspect at that stage. Investigators contacted Neil, who was staying at his parents' home, and conducted a 2-hour interview.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, is this Neil?
It is, yes.
Neil, this is, my name is Bob Manning. I'm a trooper with the Massachusetts State Police.
Hi.
How are you?
Well.
I'm calling you because we had some bad news from over here.
Yeah.
And, we have some bad news about your wife and your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We responded to the house and that they're deceased.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Sorry to tell you about your wife and your daughter.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you talk to me a little bit and tell me how you do that?
Yes. Yeah. I called out to them. There was no reply. I thought maybe they were, I couldn't hear the shower. I thought maybe in the bathroom or something. So I didn't. I just got a few things together downstairs, and that's when I found them. Knew that Joe has guns in the house. I thought maybe I could, finish, kind of get myself, that way.
I know this is difficult, and I appreciate you talking.
No, the state that I'm in at the moment is just I just couldn't get it clear in my head to do it. It's such a relief to be able to actually talk to people about this. Not done the right thing in what I've done here.
You what?
I don't feel that I've done the right thing in what I've done here by not letting, by not being the one to call and say what had happened. I haven't even cried yet.
You haven't even cried?
No. Not properly.
No?
No.
What would properly be? Because usually, my experience is not really a proper way in a situation like this. Things just happen.
Yeah. That is what he did. No, I shed a few tears, Mike.
I can tell you, I have a hard time understanding why you didn't call 911.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't.
Throughout the interview, Neil remained calm and emotionless. He spent the next 2 weeks at his family's home, during which Rachel and Lillian's funeral took place, attended by over 500 people. Neil's absence caused considerable controversy. After the phone interview, the police felt they had many leads to follow, particularly noting that Neil had mentioned his father-in-law's gun collection several times. Specialized tests confirmed that Rachel and Lillian had been shot with one of Joe's guns, and Neil's DNA was found on the weapon. Rachel's DNA was also found on the front and inside the barrel of the gun, indicating it was very close to her when she was shot in the head. On January 25th, detectives leading the investigation traveled to England to meet Neil at the American Embassy. Despite the confirmed appointment, Neil did not show up, and it was discovered that he no longer lived with his parents. On February 9th, British authorities located and arrested him at a London Underground station. Investigators secured his laptop and searched the hard drive, uncovering a second secret life. It turned out that Neil had not been working remotely after moving to America. In fact, he had resigned from his job before leaving, citing family matters. Over several years he had created several websites offering get-rich-quick schemes, further shattering the facade of their perfect life. Having once fallen victim to a scam himself, Neil Entwistle thought he had found a lucrative business idea. He sold a starter kit for £2,000 that supposedly enabled buyers to earn $2 million annually. While he made some money from these ventures, it wasn't enough to sustain him. He then decided to start living on credit. However, he continued searching for a profitable, though not necessarily legal business. Neil began selling software copies and textbooks on eBay. Eventually, he stopped sending the purchased items to users, leading eBay to block his account and launch an investigation. He also regularly visited various websites with perverse erotic content and searched online for companionship. By the time his wife and daughter died, Neil had accumulated significant credit card debt. Rachel's family released a statement at a press conference expressing their shock and heartbreak. They said that Rachel and Lillian loved Neil very much and trusted him as a husband and father. The family was devastated and couldn't comprehend how such love and trust had been so deeply betrayed. The prosecutor presented the most likely version of events. On the morning of Friday, January 20th, Neil used the gun he had taken without his father-in-law's consent and shot his wife in the head while she lay in bed. He then fired a second shot into Lillian's body. Later that day, Neil returned the gun to his in-laws' house and prepared to flee the country. Piecing together funds from credit cards, he purchased a ticket to London, left for the airport around 5 a.m. on Saturday, January 21st, and boarded a plane that departed at 8:15 a.m. The next day, the police discovered the bodies. Neil was facing financial difficulties due to debts in England and failing online businesses in the United States. Despite having no money or tangible assets, he and his wife had rented a house for $2,700 a month just days before the murders. Neil's online ventures were collapsing, and his eBay business had been shut down in early January following a series of customer complaints. The couple had moved to the United States the previous summer, but neither had held a job since, and their bills continued to mount. Neil was charged with double murder and extradited to the United States. He pleaded not guilty and changed his account of events, claiming that when he returned home from shopping he found his wife and daughter dead with a gun belonging to his father-in-law near their bodies, implying that Rachel had committed suicide. He admitted to placing the gun back at her parents' house to protect her reputation, knowing people would judge her for killing Lillian. However, his version of events sounded absurd, given the position of the bodies and the physical impossibility of the actions he described. Neil's defense attorneys filed a motion for him to be released on bail to return to England and await trial at his parents' home, but the court denied this request. They also sought to exclude all evidence collected from the couple's home, arguing the police had entered without a warrant, but this motion was also denied. The trial began in June 2008, 2.5 years after Rachel and Lillian's deaths. The prosecution's case relied primarily on circumstantial evidence, though the DNA traces found on the gun were undeniable. The prosecutor pointed to the obvious motive behind the crime. Neil's life was not as ideal as it seemed. In the courtroom, all of his online scams were revealed, including his obsession with indecent websites and conversations online. Most shockingly, an expert testified that 4 days before the murders, a password-protected file was created on Neil's laptop while he was searching for topics related to crimes involving the use of a knife. Joe, Rachel's stepfather, testified that during one of their conversations, Neil asked if Rachel and Lillian could be buried together, adding, "Because that's how I left them. I mean, that's how I found them." The prosecution portrayed Neil as a cold-hearted killer, a fraud, and a failed husband and father. The defense argued that Neil loved his daughter and wife and that everything he did and said afterward was driven by that love. Witnesses testified that the marriage seemed happy, and no one knew about Neil's double life. The defense suggested that Rachel might have been suffering from postpartum depression or feeling isolated, proposing that the case might be a murder-suicide. They pointed to the presence of gunshot residue on both of Rachel's hands, but none on items Neil had touched. The defense also noted that Neil did not attend the funeral but visited the place where he had proposed to Rachel. The jury had to decide whether Neil was a fraudster drowning in debt who decided to murder his wife and child before the truth came out, or a loving husband protecting his wife's reputation. On June 25, 2008, Neil was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Neil's parents stood by him, believing in their son's innocence and supporting the theory that Rachel had committed suicide.
I knew Rachel was depressed. Our son will now go to jail for loving, honouring, and protecting his wife's memory.
We will continue to fight for our innocent son with the hope that one day justice will prevail, and our little granddaughter Lily may rest in peace.
I condemn Neil Entwistle for compounding the unspeakable nature of what he has done by disparaging the memory of his wife and vilifying the entire Matarazzo family by his decisions during the course of this trial.
The verdict was appealed. However, the appeal was rejected in August 2012, and in January 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear the case, exhausting all legal avenues. In August 2023, Neil filed a petition for permission to appeal the decision to deny him a new trial, referencing an interview given by a juror after the 2008 verdict. At this time, there is no further information on the case, and Neil continues to serve his life sentence. As we reflect on this heartbreaking story, let us honor the memory of Rachel and Lillian. Their lives were tragically cut short, but their memory lives on. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories. Until my next video, stay informed, stay safe, and look after your loved ones.